Hello Internet, welcome back to our NPC faction guide. We're going to be dealing a little bit more with the Isherwood farm, so if that's something you don't want to hear about, you're interested in learning things on your own, this is your one and only opportunity to step away because we're going to be hitting some spoilers. So today we're going to be talking to Carlos Isherwood. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but Carlos interestingly has chosen to take his wife's name. He is Jess's husband. And so I think that that's interesting. I'm not sure if that means that he took her name prior to the apocalypse or if this is something where after the end of the world they've chosen this as a way for them to kind of pull together and be identified as a singular family. Either way, it's pretty interesting. Now, Jess handles the horse farm. We met her in the last episode. She gave us Steve here, our new horse. And she mentioned that Carlos may be able to give us some armor for our horse. So I think we will be trying to get that in this episode. So we're going to head up and talk to Carlos. He's located in this carriage house. There is, in fact, a carriage here. It does not appear to be owned by the family. It's something I could take, and it does have animal harnesses on the front, so if you had animals, you could be able to just come over here, hitch them, and take this, because it's not owned by the Isherwood family. Tried to get my horse, Steve, to come over here so I could possibly hitch him to this vehicle. He refused to cooperate. I'm not sure what's going on with his AI. He seems like once he gets inside of a fenced area, he will not leave, and I don't really know why. So I just kind of got frustrated and tied him back over at Jess. Anyway, after playing with our horse, I went over to talk to Carlos, and he says, "Hello, sir, what brings you here?" And we'll say, "Hi, it looks like you're building a forge setup." Carlos will say, "It's coming together. I want to make our own tools, repair our items, and even create some weapon and ammunition reloading." If we ask him what he needs, he'll offer us a job. We're not going to do that right this second. We're going to back out and explore some of his other dialogue options. Specifically, we have the "Hi, Jack and Claire suggested I came and talk to you about a job." He'll say that the big item I need is an anvil, and once I have that, I can get a lot of repairs done. Again, we're going to back out and hopefully talk to him about some other dialogue type things, rather than jumping right into his quest. If we ask him about Barry, we'll say, "I heard about Barry, can you tell me what captured him?" And Barry, again, was the family member who was taken and has been disappeared from the farm. Carlos will say that it was pink and really fast. It had lots of limbs, definitely not human. Easily kept up with us when we tried to escape, horrifying stuff. Barry just dropped to the ground and the thing swept him away. Pretty sure that sounds like a Migo. They're the only pink and terribly fast things I can think of. I did not really know that they had a lot of limbs. I don't think I've ever really paid attention to Migo. But either way, they do have a propensity for kidnapping people, so that makes pretty good sense. And we'll say to Carlos, "You're all just going to leave him out there to his fate?" Carlos will say, "We tracked it for a while but lost the trail. Right now we just don't have the resources to try and rescue him. Chris has been trying to pick up the trail again and figure out a rescue plan," which I think is pretty optimistic that they think he's still alive. I certainly would assume that he was dead in this situation, but it's nice. I guess keep hope alive or something. If we back out, we can ask where we could find Chris. He'll tell us that Chris is hiking the perimeter of their land, planning some defense options. And we'll meet Chris later in this episode. This time we will back out and we will try to take on his mission for us. He'll say he has a job for us and very simply say, "I could really use an anvil." And if we ask him for advice, he will tell us you might be able to find one in a hardware store or similar. I don't think I've ever seen an anvil in a hardware store. He will tell us that we can make one ourselves, which I think is probably the smarter way to do things. Probably by the time you're at Isherwood Farms and you're really looking to do some of these quests, I would imagine you have the capacity for making an anvil. It's very straightforward. You're just going to need a lot of metal and a forge. It does take quite a long time to make an anvil, but then it's a giant hunk of metal that has a shape to it that you kind of need to you put in your holes, your hardy holes and things. So I would imagine it actually would take me a really long time to make one in real life, so I think it's perfectly reasonable. I can't really say for sure that you're going to find one in a hardware store, but they reference it specifically, so I gotta assume it's at least on the loot table. But if you were pressed to do this, I think you would be better off honestly just building a forge yourself. In fact, if we go to the north of this building, there is a forge already set up. So you could potentially just use their forge and make them an anvil. Regardless of how you get it, you're going to want to bring the anvil back to Carlos. We'll say, here you go, have an anvil. And Carlos will give us a boiled leather horse barding with caparison. If you don't know what a caparison is, it's spelled wrong now that I'm looking at it. Caparison is kind of, you can think of it like horse clothing or like a really fancy horse blanket almost, honestly, some of them. It's basically just like usually a cloth covering for your horse. It's like a fancy thing from a long time ago, you know, to look nice as you're riding a horse, I guess. You see them also on like, probably, in fact, in your head, you've probably seen more elephants in them than in like real horses, because I don't think horse, you know, caparisons are all that common these days. But anytime you see a picture of an elephant, they usually have some of the cloth coverings on them. Anyway, not to ramble about it, Carlos will say, I appreciate it. This is really making a difference. Here's some horse armor that I've been working on. Eventually, I'll have the whole herd outfitted. I could use a hand with something else if you're interested. At this point, I actually backed out of that dialogue because I wanted to see if Carlos was able to trade with us. Neither he or Jess, he or his wife are willing to trade with us, so unfortunately we can't get anything from them there. So at this point, we can back out and we can get the next quest from Carlos since he doesn't have anything to trade with us. And we'll ask him, what do you need? He'll say he has another job for us, and he'll ask us to go find his son and tell him to check in with us. That would be Chris. And if we ask him for advice, he'll tell us that he may be on the property somewhere, perhaps in that old cabin near the entrance. Sometimes he camps up there. Now, we were there previously when we were dealing with Claire. We went to get her cat, which took us up to the cabin, so we'll head back out there now to meet up with their son. Again, there are some dangerous animals in the forest occasionally, so I would recommend you take your gun and whatnot. So I picked up my SIG. Apparently, at the loading of my save, it actually deleted my SIG and ammunition from existence for some reason, so don't know what that was about. And we'll head up to the cabin to find Chris. It's pretty busted out. A lot of the windows are broken. It's not hard to get into this location. And Chris is located in the bedroom down here, or at least he was for me. I assume that if he roams, which I don't think he does, I think he is purely a static NPC. But if he did roam, I'm sure it would be marked on the map. So yeah, just look around till you find Chris, and we'll talk to Chris, and he has quite a lot to say. We're going to cover this in our Chris episode, but we're not going to be doing that next. We're going to be doing that later on because of what he has to say. So for now, we'll talk to him a little bit, but we're not going to start his quest line. So we'll go to Chris, and he'll say, hi, what's up? And we'll say, hi, your dad asked me to come find you. He said you've been looking for your uncle. Chris will say, yeah, you know, they're always worried about us. I prefer to survey the land and try to track the changes. I'm thinking of trying to fix up the cabin for some peace and quiet, which makes perfect sense because if you were living on a farm with your entire family, you'd probably be pretty miserable all the time. And we'll say, it sounds like you're restless. Why don't you leave? And Chris will say, my family's convinced that if we stay here, we'll be able to weather the catastrophe. Since technology has failed, they've doubled down on older traditions, and I think we need to get out of here and find some answers before settling on a path. We'll say, let's talk about something else, and we'll ask him, what sort of changes have you seen? He'll say, well, the wildlife is more hostile, and I've seen gigantic insects around. Never mind all these monsters. I've also found mysterious dead spots and mutated vegetation. I don't think staying on a farm is sustainable forever. There are big planet-wide changes occurring. And again, we'll back out of his dialogue and we'll say, I was talking to Luke earlier. He said you had some interesting ideas about the world ending. I believe Luke is someone we met very briefly in our intro episode, and apparently me simply talking to him that one time is enough to trigger this dialogue, even though I didn't actually talk to Luke much more than to say hello. And he'll say, in one of my longer trips looking for Barry, I saw something out in a field. I didn't get close, but I swear unbelievable monsters were coming out of it. It kind of shimmered, almost like it wasn't quite there, and I've been tracking those monsters for a while. So if you don't know, he's probably talking about portals. Portals are a thing in Cataclysm, and I don't really know the lore, but to my understanding, they basically just spit out lots of terrible creatures, and possibly, based on this dialogue, is where the Migos are coming from. And we'll ask him, what did you find? And he'll say, they made their way to this weird spire-like structure. I've never seen anything like it. It glistened in the sun like something organic. I think they could be holding Barry there. I've seen them arrive and leave with other humans. And again, spoilers and whatnot, but this would be a Migo tower that he's talking about. Migo towers are made of Migo resin, which to my understanding is organic matter, so that seems to be what he's talking about. And even more of an indicator would be that they're taking humans in and out. Those Migo towers do tend to contain quite a lot of prisoners, so it makes perfect sense combined with what he said earlier that this family member was taken to a Migo tower. Also, if you don't know, Migo towers are probably one of the most dangerous places in Cataclysm. The monsters there, with their special abilities, can be quite overwhelming. In addition to that, there are a ton of Migo in the area, and it can be very difficult to navigate because it's very close quarters. Migo are very fast, which means they can damage you before you can get a shot off, things like that. And it's very, very hot there. So, for all of those reasons, I absolutely do not want to do this right now. We're not equipped really to go in that direction. I am in a mid-game character, but I would not feel comfortable going alone, although I suspect Chris would come with us. So that's not something we're going to be doing today. We'll address that in the future when we get to Chris's episode. And for now, that's really all that he has to offer us, and we're going to head back to Carlos. What's interesting is that Carlos had requested we come tell Chris to check in with the family, and none of the dialogue with Chris actually reflects that. We never actually told him, hey, go check in with your family members. So, whatever. You'll notice now in the northern area above his shop, there's actually an anvil located here. I came here on a different character who had not done the quest yet. This anvil did not appear until after we completed that quest. So it's nice to see that something we did actually changed the world at Isherwood Farm. So I think that's pretty cool, but not hugely consequential. We'll go in and we'll talk to Carlos. We'll tell Carlos that we talked to them, and Carlos will give us a chainmail horse armor. So this is much more proper armor than the caparison and, what did it say, leather barding, something like that. Which I assume is just basic leather. He'll say, thanks, I was just getting ready to go look myself. Now that I have the anvil, I've been working on new armor for the horses. Take this prototype I made. So that is free chainmail armor for a horse. I'm not someone who cares very much about horses in this game, but I could see how this would be valuable. I did take a moment to look at the horse armors because I hadn't really looked at them before. The chainmail says a heavy covering of chainmail suitably made for horses as protection. You could put this on a friendly horse. So pretty basic description, very powerful protection values. So I imagine that this goes a long way towards keeping your horse alive while you're out there fighting the apocalypse. And then I took a moment to look at the horse barding and caparison. It's a full barding for horses consisting of boiled leather and cloth undercovering. This caparison, see, it's spelled right there, so it must have been a typo in the actual item name. Caparison seems to be sponsored by Core Generator Technology with a tagline of, quote, providing power solutions from culinary to graphic design. We have the magic touch for your problems. You could put this on a friendly horse. I find this very odd because I had assumed that Carlos had made this caparison and the leather barding. It seems very peculiar to me that any kind of what sounds like a tech company who power solutions for culinary and graphic design, I have no idea how this relates to horse clothing and armor. It seems extremely peculiar that a tech company would advertise on a horse like this. It's just so strange. I think, wouldn't it have been so much better to have this have Isherwood Farm logo on it, like very simple leather stuff that Carlos had made, a caparison, maybe the leather has like a burned in like mark on it to identify it with Isherwood Farm. Wouldn't that have been much more satisfying from a roleplay perspective? I don't really understand why this has anything to do with a tech company. I was able to put both on the horse. I thought maybe because it's a caparison and it's pretty basic stuff, I thought maybe both armors could be equipped to the horse at the same time. That does not seem to be the case. So it's one or the other. So it seems really odd to me as well that you would give me leather armor for my horse and then give me a quest to go talk to someone who's very close by and immediately upon return give me chainmail. Because basically what that means is that why would I ever use the leather? The instant you give me the leather, I have to take a 2-minute walk and come back and I get an upgraded version. So I don't really understand that either. I think it would have been better to, I don't know. I like maybe just make him a trader who can sell you horse armor like chainmail. Like we got him the Anvil, and 2 minutes later he had chainmail armor, and it just is a bit interesting, that they put that they locked the chainmail armor behind such a simple, basic fetch quest. It's not even a fetch quest. It was just go, up to the corner of the farm, talk to a guy, and come back. So I feel a little bit odd about Carlos. I don't really know what to think of him. The fact that he can't sell us things and he just gives us these 2 items, I don't really love that. I would rather have been able to come back to him and possibly purchase forged stuff from him. And once we got him the Anvil, to add those things to his inventory, like we've seen with, Claire. Once we accomplished her quest, she suddenly had herbal remedies available for sale. I would have liked to have seen that with Carlos, selling horse armor and maybe even like just people armor. Now that he has a forge setup, I would much rather have seen that than just to receive 2 items I'm never going to use, and that are, one of them is obsoleted within several minutes of getting the quest. So I just I don't see a lot of value to this. That's becoming a running theme in these episodes. I've done quests now for almost every family member in my recordings, and a lot of the rewards are just so lackluster and kind of disappointing. I feel like the only reason you would do these quests is for roleplay, and I think that there's a lot of value in that, but I also would like to see like literal in-game value instead of just roleplay value. And maybe I'm just complaining too much. I do have a tendency to complain, but I really like the location. I like the idea of the family. It just seems like every time I do a quest, it just is not a satisfying reward. And we'll see more of that in the coming episodes. The next quests with Eddie are quite bad as well. So I don't know. This is up to you whether or not you want to do Carlos's quest. You could just as easily completely ignore him. The real benefit, I think, is that he points you at Chris, and Chris has like the kind of tough end game style quest available to him. So we'll be dealing with that in the future. But for now, that's a wrap on Carlos. I don't really know what to say about it. He feels kind of pointless to me, to be honest. I don't see a huge reason to interact with him. But that's going to do it. Thank you for watching. Leave me a comment if you think I missed something. Maybe Carlos is better than I think he is. And yeah, remember to hit that like button if you enjoyed the episode. I enjoy making this kind of content, but clicking the like button really helps put my videos out there for other people, for more people to see. So would greatly appreciate such a thing. But that's going to do it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.